Hello, I'm Dan from Fishbulb Films, and today we're reviewing the Zhiyun Crane 3S. We've worked with various gimbals over the years, including the Ronin M, the Ronin S and the Ronin 2. With us not having a lot of luck with the Ronin M, the Ronin S being a little bit too small for our setups, and the Ronin 2 just being way out of our budget, we switched things up a little bit and we decided to move from DJI to Zhiyun Tech. So what drew us to the Crane 3S? Well, we wanted something a little bit smaller and with more operator-friendly ergonomics when compared to something like the Ronin M. But we also wanted it to happily fly something like the C200 and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K like we have here. We have the Blackmagic primarily for gimbal work, but it's also nice to have the option of being able to fly the C200 and other bigger cameras on there too. So I'm going to start with what you get with the 3S. Now we went for the Pro package, which for us offered much better value for money when looking at what the accessories cost if you were to purchase them separately when compared to the Pro package. So within the Pro kit you get obviously the gimbal itself. You also get the tripod at the bottom, which makes it really easy to put down between shots. You also get the Easy Sling handle, which is just a normal handle. It comes with the most basic package and it is basically just a handle for gripping the gimbal with. You also get the Smart Sling handle, which is the digital handle here, which allows you to control some cameras and also switch modes on the gimbal. Then we get into the accessories, which can be purchased separately, such as the Transmount Image Transmission Transmitter, it's a bit of a mouthful, the Power Plus battery pack, and 2 motors for controlling focus and zoom from the gimbal. As well as all of this, you get a ton of cables for power and camera control, the extension arm allowing you to fly bigger cameras, batteries, a charger, and all of the necessary screws and other little bits you'd expect to receive. So yes, you get a lot when you buy the Pro package. Now it would take me days and days to go through everything in detail. So this is really just a summary of the gimbal only based on how we use this system. If you'd like us to look at anything in particular, any specific accessories, drop a comment below and we'll do that for you. So the gimbal itself seems really well made. And as soon as you've got a camera on and it's balanced, you can really feel the strength of those motors. They're seriously powerful. We've added the extension arm, which is here, and this allows you to have larger cameras on the gimbal system. And we're actually going to leave it on. It's a little bit fiddly to add, and it involves moving some of the internal cables and stuff around. So we'd rather just keep it there set up rather than taking it on and off as and when we need it. Something I really like about this is somehow it still fits inside the case, even when it's got the extension arm on. I'm not really sure how that works, it's some sort of magic, but I like it. In terms of balancing, this gimbal is okay. Gimbal balancing is the bane of my life, but I think this one is probably one of the better ones. Something I experienced with the Ronin 2 was the ability to fine-tune each axis with knobs that made small incremental movements to each axis. Now sadly the 3S doesn't actually feature anything like this, so we're back to making those small adjustments manually by physically moving things back and forth. It's probably unfair to compare it with the Ronin 2 as they're just on completely different levels within the gimbal world. Making the adjustments is easier on some axes than others we've found. So we found that the best way was to actually use the weight of the camera to your advantage. Otherwise you end up having to put a lot of force in and you end up moving it really far, too far the other way, and then having to work your way back again. Some of it is just so stiff and we're just hoping that over time it's going to get a little bit easier to make those adjustments, because at the moment you really have to put a lot of force onto each axis. With our C200 it was really easy to balance, but less so with the Blackmagic 6K. The Blackmagic is obviously a really wide camera. Famously Blackmagic make their cameras at strange shapes and sizes, and that form factor does really cause some issues on many gimbals, and this one is one of those. There's loads and loads of videos out there about how to balance the Pocket Cinema cameras on this style of gimbal that you can find and watch, but quite simply all we've done is we've added a half cage to our camera, and that has allowed us to move the camera further over to ensure that the centre of gravity is basically more central, so that you can bring the camera further in to this motor as opposed to having it really far out. This gimbal has locks on each of the axes, which is really useful. It's useful for balancing, and it's also for when you're moving around. So the locks allow you to focus on one axis at a time when you're balancing. And it also stops your camera from flying around in endless circles when you strap it into the back of a car in between locations. The placement of the locks took a little while to get used to. When we first got it, there were a few occasions when we had to really think about what we were locking or unlocking and where that particular knob was. It also seems to be quite easy for them to flick back on. So if you don't completely turn them to unlock them, they can actually flick back into the lock position. If you turn the gimbal on when any of the locks are on, it makes some scary beeping noises, and then it kills the motors to protect them, which is really, really good. And we found the best way to then sort all of that out is to power the whole system down, unlock everything again, and power it back up. It doesn't take long for the gimbal to turn back on, and it's the most efficient way of making sure that everything is as it should be with the gimbal. As with all of the Zhiyun gimbals, it has lots of modes, which are pretty cool. So having come from those larger gimbals from DJI, where you have to manually set things like stiffness and acceleration, these presets are really, really handy for when you're doing run and gun shooting. As a quick rundown, you have pan follow, which is the default mode, and it lets you pan left and right, but it doesn't tilt the camera. You've got follow mode, which is exactly the same as the pan follow, but it does allow you to tilt the camera. Point of view mode, which is, as before, you've got pan, you've got tilt, and you've also got roll. Then you've got vortex mode, which allows you to roll the camera a full 360 whilst it's in underslung mode for those really trendy sort of content shoots. You've got lock mode, or as I like to call it, show off mode, where the camera stays in one position regardless of what you do, so you can walk all the way around the camera and it's not going to go anywhere. There's go mode as well. This is similar to POV, but the stiffness and acceleration is really, really high, so it allows you to do whip pans and other fancy transitions. And then finally, there's this weird selfie mode. No idea why anyone would want to use it or have the strength to use it, because I'd love to see a vlogger walking along with one of these in one hand, trying to talk to the camera for any length of time because it is heavy. Performance-wise, so far this is actually one of the best gimbals I've experienced in terms of smoothness of footage. Certainly the best for its price and style. The battery life also seems to be really, really good. We mostly use it with the additional battery pack that comes with the Pro package, but the internal batteries seem to last a very, very long time. It's difficult to put a number on it because obviously it depends on how well balanced your camera is and also what the payload is, but a stripped down Blackmagic like this, you'd expect to get 4 to 6 hours out of the internal batteries, which is really, really solid. One thing I do really need to talk about is the weight. As I previously mentioned, this thing is really heavy. And although it has this tripod at the bottom, which makes putting it down really easy, you're not really going to want to use this for any length of time without some sort of additional support. A few companies have come out with rings to fit around it, so you can actually have a ring that goes all the way around it for use with something like a Ready Rig. And there's also a Steadicam style vest and arm from Digital Photo, which looks really, really cool as well. Like I say, this is just a very, very brief overview of the Crane 3S. And if you'd like to know anything in particular about the gimbal itself or any of the accessories, let us know in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.